Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the AlexAndMo Podcast. And tonight we have Kendell joining us. What's up, Kendell? You know, every time you meet me, it's like, Wagwan.
Hey, what happening, star? Hey, you gotta take it back to like Sound Splash, right?
So,
You know,
yeah.
when David Radigan used to say, "Look, I've been doing this thing since I've been a little boy in khaki shorts." You know what I mean? So yeah, definitely.
Definitely. And you know, speaking about David Rudder, he just announced that he was recently diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. So,
Wow.
we wish him all the best with his recovery. But you know what? Having a great physio team, speech and occupational therapy, David Rudder, we wish you all the best as you seek your treatment. So, Kendall, now, man, you're a man of many talents.
Well, some people call it talent. Some people just say I have um, a gift for causing trouble, right? All right, for getting into things. Yeah.
Oh,
So
good trouble, right? Good trouble.
good
right?
trouble. Good trouble. Good trouble. Yeah.
All right.
So
So,
you're a disruptor.
he is
Yeah.
definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
I like it. I like it.
Yeah.
Do you always thought that you were?
Yeah. Yeah. I think back in the village, if my mother couldn't find me, she knew where to go look, right? And it was always around people who were playing dominoes, listening to BBC World Service, and I'd go back to the shop and I'd be able to stand on two Coca-Cola crates and tell you play by play who said what it went down, right? As I had some people in my family that called me T Avocat, little lawyer, right?
Oh, little lawyer. Okay.
Yeah. But it's just one of those things, you know what I mean? I think really plugging into understanding a life, like this is just what we have, right? So you have this time and you got to figure out how to use it, the best impact, the largest amount of people with what you do and how you do it. So, just always looking for opportunities to, always have this edge, right? So it is either I could cause bad trouble, right? Or I could kind of figure out how to leverage my life experiences and relationships and move people in a different direction. So
You mentioned village.
Yeah.
Where did you grow up, Kendall?
So I was born and raised in the Commonwealth of Dominica, Casa Bruce, all right, in the parish of St. David, and moved from Dominica to the Virgin Islands, and then from the Virgin Islands I came to the U.S., the mainland, to go to undergraduate and then graduate school.
Okay.
So-
What was the experience like in Dominica's?
Man, heaven! I didn't know how poor I was until I set foot on campus at Sanford University. But I think I was Dominica is the island of 365 rivers. Some people will call them creeks here, but it's still 365 rivers. But I think to understanding, like, I didn't live in a house with running water and electricity until I was 9, and those kind of beginnings, and then understanding the investment that my mom made to move us to the Virgin Islands, and just those things. I mean, you think about you had to pass CXEs, or common entrance exam, to go to high school. You had to pay to go to high school if you wanted to be able to go to university and things like that. So I think those beginnings really kind of are woven into just how I live life now.
So you went from the islands and ended up at Sanford in Alabama, correct?
Yeah.
Talk
But
about a culture shock.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I lived in South Carolina in Spartanburg, Greenville for a year.
Mm-hmm.
I was born in Columbia, South America, grew up in Miami, went to PT school in Tampa, so pretty much a Florida boy the whole time.
Yeah.
And then go in South Carolina. I mean, that was a bit of a culture shock for me, but I had been in the States. For you to go from the island life to Alabama, like, what was that like? And, were you here by yourself?
Yeah, it was me. I think I think the big thing was, my mom wanted me to start off at the University of the Virgin Islands. And, when I came up and I interviewed at Sanford, I just said, I can't afford to come to school here, but if you accept me and make it financially possible, I'm coming and you won't regret it. But I also knew that I had to plant myself in a place where I was super uncomfortable, where I had to be self-reliant in a sense, but I also I had to expand my boundaries a little bit in terms of what I thought was possible. And Sanford gave me an opportunity to do that. Small enough class sizes. It didn't get too cold here. At least that's what I thought. And it's fairly easy to get home. But the food was definitely different. The vibe, just in terms of the mindset, was different. You know what I mean? You can find ignorant people anywhere, but here you're not necessarily aligned with people that look like you 100% of the time, because I was a majority, right? Like if you drop me off in Medellin, I feel comfortable, but I could also go down to Chile and I'm good. Like I could navigate the islands because I could speak different dialects. My comprehension and the understanding of Spanish and French and Creole, just it was like, it was perfect. You know what I mean? And just like you, like if you go in Miami, well, you can be in a little Havana, you can be in a little Haiti, and you don't feel like you really are out of the islands.
Yeah.
But here it's a little bit different. But I think one of the most important things for me was kind of leveraging the experience to be a chameleon in a sense, because I started assimilating. Like I would turn off my accent. And people, really because people kept asking me to repeat myself, not because they couldn't understand me.
Tell me about it.
I like the way you talk. I'm like, man, I'm talking for your enjoyment. You know what I mean? I'm trying to get a point across. So it was one of those things, but it also truly helped me to understand how being the only in a room, like how mastery of the vernacular can open doors beyond what the mind sometimes is able to consider. The people that you're able to touch, really, because I have to think so much faster than I speak because I have to get it out in this form of English, right? And so that's a filter, and I had to get comfortable doing that, and it served me well in my career thus far.
When did PT become the thing for you? Was that something that you had kind of seen in the islands and kind of came over here, or did it happen over here? What was that like for you?
No, it really happened over here. I came as a pre-pharmacy major. Started working in a pharmacy back when I was 14. And then, there was something different because I've always been an entrepreneur. And for seeing pharmacy here, there wasn't a clear-cut path or a path that made sense for me to continue the journey into pharmacy, because I couldn't, or at least I thought that the environment wouldn't lend itself well to me being in a private pharmacy setting, especially because of just the navigation of coming from home to here. But then I became a student athletic trainer and kind of seeing what that vibe was and being exposed to that. And then it's like, okay, well, I don't really want to be an athletic trainer. It didn't encompass everything that I wanted. So I started shadowing here. There's a place called the Lakeshore Foundation where I got to work with disabled athletes and then just disabled individuals. And then that put me in a situation where when I went back to St. Croix one winter, I got to see a PT who had actually been in the military, and watching her, her name was Angelica Schuster, and watching her kind of navigate that space and seeing how she was able to make a difference in lives there, it was like, all right, this could work because it allows me to connect that entrepreneurial spirit that I had with a path that took me, I think, really a lot farther than if I went to medical school. Because if I went to medical school, the investment of time and dollars was one thing, but the lifestyle wasn't something I was in love with. And so this just kind of made a lot of sense for me. And then as I started to further identify my core competence and how I wanted to use that core competence, then PT started to separate itself from other professions.
It's interesting because you hear so many people say you can't become wealthy doing physical therapy. So, do you have that same opinion now that you've done PT school, started your business, having multiple locations? How can you encourage other young therapists in school and graduating to navigate that and be confident that they have to think outside the box in order to create wealth?
Yeah. Well, I think what you said really is it makes a whole lot of sense when you kind of think about Simon Sinek. Start with why. That's probably when I think about it, and I tell students, whether they're current students or looking to go into PT school, and they say, well, I want to become a PT because I want to help people, or I want to become a physician because I want to help people. So, man, my garbage man helps me. All right. So every Wednesday night, I pull the trash and I roll this trash can up to the road, and like magic, when I get home Thursday night, it's gone. The trash is gone. I just roll an empty trash can back down and put it by the house. So that person helps me. They help a lot of people. It's just a different path. And so you have to ask yourself, okay, well, why do I want to do this? Like, what appeals to me? And if I understand why, then I can kind of figure out and have clarity around if I'm the right who. And then once I do that, then the what, the how much, that gets easy. Like, how much is actually in my decision-making framework, how much is the last question that I ask? And so when you kind of think about building wealth, well, what does it really take? It can take one source of income or one revenue stream, or it can take multiple revenue streams. Go back to the idea of core competence. I have a very, very simple kind of reason for living, right? So raison d'etre. My raison d'etre is basically, I believe I was created to motivate, support, and inspire. And so whatever avenue allows me to do that will ultimately build wealth. And it may be important what my perspective on wealth is. A multi-location practice is great. You can scale to 5, 6 locations, 10 locations, and then roll that up, sell it to a private equity group or venture capital group, work out your 5-year non-compete, and do the same thing over and over again. But that has a shelf life. And so my number one key performance indicator, or KPI, within the company is lives touched. And so when you kind of start thinking about building wealth, it doesn't matter if you have a specialty or a subspecialty within PT. What matters is how are you going to define what wealth is to you, and then how are you going to leverage your time? I remember I was part of another organization, and I was running a meeting one time. And I said, hey, listen, we went to great schools, elementary school, middle school, high school, college. We went to great PT schools, and some of us, not myself, but some of us have 0 student loans. And our insurance companies pay us, and people pay us to spend 45 minutes, an hour, 2 hours of their time with us every week. We get paid to do that. Why can't we change the world? And everybody look at me like I was smoking a blunt, like I had been drinking before I came to the meeting. And I went from this kind of worldview to, hey, like, maybe the world's too big. I went to North America, and I was like, all right, maybe that's too big. Went from North America to like the Southeast US. That was too big. Went to the state of Alabama. That was too big. Went to the city. That was too big. Like, I was still the crazy guy in the room. So I said, well, what about just the neighbor to the right and left of you, wherever you live? Right? Like, if you could touch those 2 lives, man, you think about it. You give us time to work with people, and the way we do it allows us to to create value in their mind. We own real estate in their mind as it relates to, hey, like our company, we help people move well, live well, and do amazing things. You meet me somewhere, say, hey, what do you do for a living? I help people move well, live well, and do amazing things. Or whatever you use your body to do, I help you do it better. There's not a window. I'm not a commodity. There's not a window for that. There's not a shelf life. So I can take that and turn it to sports. And what I want to travel with athletes, what I want to work with just high school athletes or athletes just starting their athletic career, what I want to work in a geriatric population, what I want to work with people who've been diagnosed with cancer or Parkinson. It doesn't really matter. How can you take that skill set, scale it, right? And business is very, very simple. There's a book called The Goal. Elihu Goldratt is an Israeli physicist, right? There's capacity, there's bottlenecks, and there's output. He calls it throughput, but it's the same thing. Any business is what? Capacity, what your limitations are, and how much money you make at the end of the day. That's pretty much it. So if you have clarity around your why and you're the right who, it gets really easy. It's just that I feel like sometimes the barrier for a lot of people is that there's not a lot of clarity around that. I remember I asked a question of some people, and I said, "Hey, is this company a franchise?" I said, "Well, no." I said, "Okay, well, if it's not a franchise, help me to understand your P&L." And so then I became a problem. I became a problem because I wanted clarity around why profits didn't match up to time invested, because my time is said to be my greatest asset, right? And it was interesting that people are okay trading time for dollars, but they're not okay investing time for dollars. I don't understand the difference there for them, but if you want to create generational wealth, you've got to figure out why you're doing it. But then you also have to then put yourself in the right vehicle. You have to put yourself in a vehicle where you're investing your time and your talents for a reasonable return on investment. And you can't expect anybody in PT school to teach you that. You can't expect anybody in med school or law school to teach you that. Some of the best and brightest people I know, they don't have college degrees, but they identify needs and they fill those needs or meet those needs better than anybody else in the market. They take the profits from that early adopter group, right? And they go find another green pasture, and they do the same thing over and over and over again. And I think we can do that as PTs.
But we have to seek clarity.
Yes, clarity is a must.
Well, you're asking people to do a lot, because to seek clarity requires you to dig deep, to search within you. Also, to get clarity, you have to have a well-defined message. And do we have one in physical therapy?
No, we don't. I mean, Alex might disagree, but I'm about 99.9.
Oh no, Alex! Alex ain't gonna disagree on that one.
No. I'm right there. I'm right there with you. We don't. I mean, we talked about this last week when we had Jeff Moore on, president of the CEO of the APTA.
Oh,
Justin. Sorry.
Right.
It was, we don't have a clear message that, there is not one banner, I feel like, that we can stand and say, hey, boom, this is what we stand on. This is what we do. Right. So that in itself, proposes a challenge for us as professionals, but also for our clients. To know how we can help them, right? So a lot of the stuff that you were saying, which is brilliant stuff, it kind of brings back to, again, another guest, when he said, you got to tell a story. And when you tell a story, that's how you get the buy-in.
Yeah.
Right? Because people don't care that you've got 4, 5, 6 clinics. Doesn't matter to them. It doesn't matter that, you know, you came from the islands and you've persevered and you're doing very successful things for you and your team. That doesn't help them, right? So you, like you said, you've got to find that one thing that you do well and find a way to take that and make somebody's life easier or better, or both. You know, so and you're right, like this kind of thinking, we don't learn that in PT school. You know, there's been debates like, oh, should you get some kind of business education in PT school? Like that should be part of the curriculum. You know, the argument can be made either way, I feel like, but yeah, like we have to figure out how to connect with the person across from us. Like you said, they've given us time. Time is supposed to be the most valuable asset. Well, let's put some value in it.
Right.
And I think that as a profession, we're still learning that. And I think obviously as individuals, some of us may be ahead more so than others, but still we're still learning, right? We're taking something that we are accustomed to being told when to be able to do it, instead of saying, no, your permission. I don't need your referral. This is what I can do for you, and just do it.
There was something that he mentioned too, Alex, that is very important. A lot of people are more willing to trade their time for money rather than invest their time to get money, because to them the mindset is, if I trade my time to get money, it's like an immediate feedback. But investing takes time. You could start a business, you might not break even or make a profit the first couple of years, and that deflates a lot of people and they give up. That's why most businesses go under within a year or two or even 3. They don't go past that because people don't want to invest money. You know, you get your tax return. I haven't gotten one in years, but that means my business is doing well. But they
Or you
would
need
go,
to get a better accountant.
oh no, I'm good. Don't send the IRS on me, okay? I'm good. I'll pay the money back. So but they would rather take that money and go buy some material thing instead of improving on their skills that would at least put them in a position to get generational wealth, or even to beat a recession or become recession proof. And that's a problem that a lot of us are facing, because we just want that direct stuff. We want to work harder, not smarter.
Yeah, so you know, it's really interesting. You talk about investment, and people don't really understand the value of compound interest, right? You know, part of the reason I am where in business where I am now, I had a client, he's an 85-year-old guy, and he would say, hey, you know, he'd ask me these random questions. And I just thought maybe he was kind of senile, right? And it was cool. We just kind of went off of that. But one day I walked in the treatment room and he said, hey, before we get started, we need to talk. I want you to sit down. And he hands me 2 business cards. And he said, I know a thing or two about building wealth. He said, I you know, you may think I'm kind of off. You know, I've kind of lost it with the questions I've been asking you, because he would ask me like, who are you responsible for? Who, like, what are you working for? What are you working towards? What have you had to overcome? Like, what are 2 or 3 of the hurdles you see in terms of moving your life forward? And you know, I would answer him just casually. We were just having a conversation, right? He hands me these 2 cards. One is his card. One is a guy who was his understudy. And he said, I don't want you to sign any piece of paper ever again that ties you to business or anything else financially without me looking it over or this guy looking it over. He knows how important you are to me. And I looked at him and he goes, and as long as I'm alive, I'm your attorney, gratis. And I looked at him. He goes, I know you know what it means. And he said, I'm serious. And that guy, turns out, he was also mentor to a guy that has become a mentor and friend of mine who was also a client of mine. And the reality is, if I had shared with that guy, the second guy, right? If I had shared with him when I first treated him what my plans were, what my goals were, we would be having this conversation in a different space, right? And it is sometimes we're so focused on the right now, or we're focused on the shiny object, or we're focused on this big obstacle that we see, that we don't realize that that obstacle is our path. Like the book, the obstacle is the way, or that premise of the obstacle in the way is the way, is no different. I don't care if you're reading Sun Tzu, Art of War. I don't care if you're reading Peter Drucker, The Effective Executive. They teach you some of the very same principles. You can go back and just read Proverbs, right? The same principles apply. If you want to earn, you have to work. That's and it doesn't mean that you're working in a business. It might be that you're working on a business. It might be that you're doing the work of thinking about, how do I take this $1,000 and turn it over and over and over and over and over again. That's compound interest. Because remember, in high school, middle school, somewhere, they asked you if you wanted a penny compounded daily, or like $20 million or $30 million. On day 21 and 22, we're about neck and neck. The last week is where the difference is made, right? If I start investing at 18, let's say I'm saving let's say somewhere between $4,000 and $6,000 a year. At 18, I become a multimillionaire. If I start doing the same thing at 30, I don't. Right? And compound interest does that. But I also think that people limit interest to finances. But what I do, for example, is every year I earn the equivalent of an MBA. I have a plan for reading and learning at the beginning of the year that sets me up to win in different phases of life, whether it's finances, whether it's the nuts and bolts of practicing PT, whether it's social entrepreneurship, you name it, organizational design. This year, I kind of started working with my first client as it relates to organizational design, and it's completely a relationship thing. I was in Scottsdale last week, and I called up a guy and said, hey, I want to do a mystery shopper experience within your company. And he said, are you serious? I said, yeah. Tell me one of your locations are struggling. And so we talked, he gave me the information, and I went as a patient. All right. And I was able to not only glean information from the experience that helps him move his organization forward, I'm able to glean information that helps me look more introspectively at our team and identify whether I have our team members in the right place, whether I'm asking them to do things that go beyond their capacity. So that investment is also investment in people and in relationships. All right. You talked about having that clarity of purpose. Everybody on our team can tell you what my reason for breathing is. And I try to weave that into every aspect of the practice. And when you think about the trade-off, if we shift the perspective from trading off time to invest in time, I wrote a blog the other day about just this time crunch that we think we have. And if, for example, if I told you, hey, I can't do this show, man, I don't have any time. What I'm telling you is, hey, really, I have to say no to the opportunity now so I can say yes to the opportunity later. I'm telling you that it's not that there's not a clear value proposition that you've delivered to me. I'm just saying that there are other things that are more important and present a higher return on the investment of my time now, and I need to go do those things. That's a completely different conversation, because you can respect that. You can say, you know what? Yeah, Chief, like I get it. I get it. We'll circle back next year. Can I go ahead and put it on your radar for next year? And we do the same thing with clients. We should fire clients, right? We should, the client that doesn't show up, that doesn't value your time and your team's time and doesn't respect it and doesn't do the work. You come in and the person hadn't done anything you had asked them to do. Because you look at their movement pattern and you're like, yeah, this person hadn't done anything. And then, or you may even say, look, maybe I didn't do a great job on the eval. Maybe
well, that's what I was gonna say. Being devil's advocate, did the therapist show that patient the value of, hey, this is what my time is worth spending to do versus, taking care of my kids or going to work and stuff like that. Sometimes we are just lousy at showing that value.
And that goes back to storytelling. It 100% goes back to storytelling.
How do you improve on the storytelling, Kendell?
Listen, man. So practice. You listen to stories. You go read books about storytelling. Here's one of the things when I speak, and so I'm gonna tell you, go back to this. Give me people who are hungry, and we will win. Give me people who can dream big, and we will win. Give me people that rain, sleet, hail, snow. We'll work until the job is done, and we will win. We will win. If I tell you that, right, and I repeated this, that repetition, it carries on, right? But if I just say, hey, yeah, Mo, we're gonna win. Yeah, we'll win tomorrow. I haven't connected with you emotionally. I hadn't painted a picture that allows you to see what success looks like. If that client comes in and I say, hey, Ms. Smith, I understand that your back hurts and your physician gave you a referral for us to help you with some back pain. But help me to understand, if your back didn't hurt, what would you be doing? Help me to understand what's important to you. Tell me what you're missing out on because of this back pain. That's a completely different conversation. I've elevated it to a perspective of, this is what is. Your back hurts. This is what could be. Because if I know where I'm taking you, man, now I'm energized, right? I'm showing up with my best stuff because I know that you're going to do your part and I'm going to do my part. If we go to for example, we go to a white tablecloth restaurant where either of you live, it's a clear value proposition. I want a great dining experience. Excuse me. You notice a white tablecloth restaurant, I'm not looking at their menu and shopping on price. Right? And then when I ask you about your best or your worst dining experience, when I ask you about your best dining experience, you're going to tell me about who you were with. Right? It goes back to that limbic brain experience. When I ask you about your worst dining experience, you're not going to tell me about who you were with. You're going to tell me how bad the service was. Same thing. Because you can tell me that, but I have to connect it with some neurons that really aren't connected to speech and to get that feeling like, oh man, that was bad. You know what I mean? And so it's the same thing in no matter what business you run. If you can connect with people based on their life experience, and you seek to be interested versus interesting, all right, then you can win. You asked about storytelling. I talked to my team about this, and I talked to other teams about this actually, is if I meet somebody at a bar and I walk over and I said, hey, my name is Kendell. Pleasure to meet your acquaintance. And I go on and on and on and on about myself. I read my whole CV, right? The person's going to tap me and say, hey, Kendell, the people I'm waiting for, they're at another place. I'm going to go meet them. Pleasure meeting you. And I'll be still standing there. Hey, they're gone. But if I walk up to the same person and I say, hey, I'm Kendell. I'm not supposed to speak to strangers, so allow me to make your acquaintance. Tell me about yourself. 2 hours later, we're in the same spot having a great conversation. all because I gave that person an opportunity to share, and I listened generously. That's the art of storytelling. That's it. People are gonna give you those nuggets.
You got to make it personal.
Yeah.
You got to make it personal. You know, that's how you get the buy-in. You know, and that for me, you know, and Mo can speak on this as well. Like, you know, for us is a little bit different. You know, we're in home health, so we're going into somebody's home.
Mm-hmm.
So now that completely changes the landscape,
Yeah.
right? Because you're walking into somebody's personal space. You know, it's a lot different when they walk into your clinic or anybody else's clinic, because it's probably considered a neutral playing field
Mm-hmm.
for some, right? But when you walk into somebody's home, I mean, you've got to make that connection, and you've got a small window to make that connection, to make it personal, to connect with that person, so that not only are they going to allow you back in their home, but they're also going to listen to the things that you're going to ask of them, so that they can see the benefit, they can see the value, they can get better, right? But it is exactly that. It doesn't matter what business, what you're doing, where you're doing it. If you connect with individuals on a personal level, like you said, if you're interested, then you have a much bigger opportunity to be successful, to win, as you said,
Yeah.
right? Because every patient encounter that we have, regardless of the setting, is an opportunity to win. It's an opportunity for the patient to win, more so than us. It's them to get whatever it is that they're looking for.
Yeah.
You know, because again, you had mentioned, you know, earlier about they didn't see the value, and I like to feel like sometimes the value isn't even necessarily physical. It isn't necessarily, you know, strength, anything of the sorts. It's literally a human interaction with somebody different who's listening to them, and now they've received an emotional win, a mental win, which then opens them up to the physical wins, which is what ultimately we're trying to help them with, right?
Yeah.
And I tell that to a lot of my patients, because I walk in and patients just like telling me about their day, telling me about their family, you know, different issues, whatever the case. They're like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm just rambling." I'm like, "No, by all means, open. Tell me the story. I want to know, because then I can use that as a way to connect. Because the next time I come in, you know, and this happened with a patient. I had a patient that I needed to push a week out because a family member was getting married, right? So I walk in the home, and the first thing that I say, other than, "Hey, good morning, how are you doing? How was the wedding?" I haven't even talked to you about anything to do with why I'm here, but how was the wedding?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, the wedding was great. You know, it
Like
was
you remembered.
you know, it was
Remembered.
we did all of this. Man, I could tell this patient, go outside in the street, jump on one leg, and yell whatever it is at the top of your lungs. I've got a good shot of getting them to do that.
Yeah.
You know, so, and I think that's the biggest thing for especially our new professionals, our students graduating, is make those connections. Make those connections, because that's going to go a lot further than whatever letters you decide to put after your name.
Yeah. Right. I just had a clinical intern, and we talked about this, and she wrote me an awesome note, and I shared it with my team, because the note wasn't really about me. The note really was about the team. The team allows me to do the things that I do, and it was the fact that she'd had a terrible another outpatient experience that I mean, it was bad. She had no desire to enter the profession from an outpatient setting. She dreaded an outpatient that coming to our practice, and so, you know, we never talked about this during the clinical. I mean, I really found out about this during the last week, maybe week and a half, and it talked about how inspiring it was to be with our team, and how it reignited an interest and a belief that outpatient PT really is an awesome place to be, because it wasn't about numbers. It wasn't about um, a specific skill set to mobilize a joint or an exercise technique. It was care and concern. It was, hey, how are you? Right? How are you doing today? Not just clients, people on the team. And then taking the ability to connect and then building on top of it, because you may have a very small toolbox from a skill set standpoint, but those things that people talk about, soft skills, absolutely, they're required skills. Um, Growing up, I watched, my mom and YA, Mr. Austri. And he was just a giant as in my life as it relates to building and managing relationships. If you came to the shop and your mother sent you to the shop, or father, whoever, for rice or whatever it was, and it was, oh, Mr. Austri, my mother said to send her this. He would send it, even though your account was in the red. I could open his ledger book. All right. I still remember the colors of his ledger book. And open it, and you were in the red. And he wouldn't treat that child any different than somebody who was in the black. But he may say something about, oh, tell your mother congratulations on the banana crop. So tell your mother this. So he would send some message to that parent, not, hey, you owe me. It was just a greeting. At the end of the week, the end of the fortnight, the person would show up. They would move their account to the black, and they would bring some bananas, or they would bring, some plantain, or they would bring something, for YA, right? And it was just amazing to see how he dealt with people. Some of those people worked for him, right? And you watch how he was a tough guy. Don't get me wrong. He was no nonsense in certain respect, but he might chew you out and then tell you, hey, take a drink, right? And he'd have this dialogue with you, because he also knew that you also got the feeling, you had the sense that he cared about you, and that is, I don't care where you go, man. That right there, I think you can drop us off anywhere in the world, any three of us. We don't have to speak the language, but I guarantee you we can get back home. Right?
Sure.
That is emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence for me is like when people show you who they are, you believe them the first time and you start taking notes. And then you have conversations. If somebody gets up and walks out of a meeting because you ask a question, that should stick, right? You watch how they treat people who they've been in business with for a long time, who they call friends. And it should stick. It should start cueing you in to what matters to you and what matters to them. Because if you have a business partner, a team member that comes to you and you're not tuned into on the relationship side, you're not listening to the stories that they're telling you, you're not paying attention to how that person communicates with their loved ones, and you're gonna fool yourself, and you can lose. You can lose a patient. You can lose a partnership. You can lose somebody who will do whatever it takes to help you be successful, even though it's not necessarily in their best interest. If you lack the ability to simply connect with people and to build and maintain great relationships, because I've been in situations, man, where when you realize that you're building somebody else's mansion, it brings you back to some places that again, I'm very, very connected to how I grew up. And the idea of investing time. I remember when Hurricane Maria hit, I can tell you the patients and clients that brought checks, that brought supplies. And I can tell you the people who their lack of action spoke volumes. Right? So, in a matter of 48 hours, my childhood homes were, I mean, completely decimated. And I had people that I've treated once or twice that showed up for me and for my family, right? But I also had people who I've had a tremendous impact on where they are professionally. They weren't around, and so for me, I could keep making those trade-offs, right? Or I could start making some bona fide investments. And when you kind of think about that, I think Maya Angelou that says you never forget how people make you feel, right? People can tell you they believe in you, but if you present them with a business opportunity and the red line version of that business contract or business agreement or a lease agreement or whatever it is that they hand back to you has things that don't make any sense as it relates to your character, you got to take stock. You have to understand that, hey, maybe they're just not in a great place with themselves, and their actions has nothing to do with me. Somebody that don't want to see you because of the color of your skin, right? They don't want you. They want to come to your facility, but they don't want you to treat them, right? Then you got to say, you know what? I'm gonna impact this person more based on how I treat them than how they treat me, right? Because it's not a me problem, it's a them problem. When your team member says, "Hey, I want to raise," and your KPIs clearly spells out how you can earn $20,000 more, and they're not willing to take the steps that the KPIs dictate, right? These steps are required to get a raise, to earn more, and they're not willing to do it. They're telling you with their actions, "Hey, boss, like I want you I want you to give me a raise. I want you to invest in me and continue to show up for me, but I'm not willing to do the same for you." Right? I think a lot of those things, man, we see it in school, and there are people that are culpable here, right? When you accept someone into a PT program, you have a fiduciary responsibility to show up for that person, to support their matriculation through school. But you also have a responsibility to stop accepting people into the profession that don't benefit the profession. Right?
How do you screen those out?
Well,
I mean, PT school is a business.
This
We
is very true.
definitely know it's a business.
Definitely
We
true.
heard that last week.
Yeah. So if it's a business, what we only touch, well, we touch less than 10% of the lives that we have the ability, or that we should touch as therapists, right? And if we expand that and really kind of capture the market, we don't have enough PTs. But we routinely educate people that spend less than 5 years in the profession. And we can use the word burnout, but isn't the team member that gets burned out, isn't that the person who has been making these trade-offs that didn't balance out? There was an unbalanced equation and they couldn't balance it. And so they get to a point where now the trade-off simply doesn't make any more sense to continue. And so they withdraw themselves from the profession. But I think sometimes we have a process by which we identify onboard new team members. We're a business, but we also understand that increased turnover is not great for our business. We understand that the right who's is great for our business. We understand that the right whys is great for our business. So I think we can simply do the same thing on the side of education. People who have great test scores are not necessarily the greatest team members. People who have great skills are not necessarily the best team members. So, on one hand, we can say, well, this is PT school is a business, true enough. But on the other hand, don't we have a responsibility to the profession to put people out within the profession that can help move the profession forward, that can articulate. If you can articulate a great value proposition, and I'm running a PT program, you can get it. I don't care. I don't care what your class rank is. I don't care anything about that. But I do care about whether you are the right who. And which is again, we're asking academia. So we have 220 something PT programs in the country. So we're asking those 220 something programs to become the gatekeepers for the profession. Now that's a problem.
It is extra work. But my question to you is, would the right who and the right why pass the board exam? That's all they care about.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
Listen, I will not sit back and tell you I worked sometimes 35 hours a week when I was in PT school. The only time in PT school I didn't work was my first semester, and that's because they asked me not to work. I said, look, I'm not the same student if I don't work. But here's the thing. I had professors who did not believe I was engaged enough in school, didn't think I was going to be successful, right? I had that in undergrad. I had it in graduate school. I tell you who those people are. But it doesn't matter to me, because I remember when I first tendered my first letter, when I tendered my resignation, very first resignation letter I wrote. And it was one of those things where I understand what's above my pay grade. And one of those things are people's feelings. Right? Like,
I like that one.
It's not a relationship thing. So, the three of us, your feelings are not above my pay grade. But, if we can talk about something, if we can communicate around an idea and we have a difference of opinion, that's not a problem. It doesn't preclude us from continuing that relationship. But if your feelings get in the way of clear and impactful communication, we have a problem, right?
And that's a you problem, not you. Not you, but what I'm saying, like,
yeah.
And that's the biggest thing. Going back to your earlier points about people that don't invest and don't do the work,
Mm-hmm.
and it kind of goes into what I always tell Mo, which is like a motto of mine, which is 4011, which is the number on my house, right? Because if you live in this house, your opinion matters, and we all are all on the same page as to what we need to do to accomplish what we're going. Mm-hmm. Anybody outside, that's a you thing, because it doesn't impact what happens under this roof, right? So that's the biggest thing. A lot of it's those feelings, and somehow I need to be concerned about your feelings. Well, only way you're involved is if you've done your part to make them be involved, right? Because if you're doing the work, I can't be concerned with your feelings, your thoughts, or whatever the case may be.
Right.
So it absolutely is true. And going back to your other point about the who and the why, I like to use an analogy of a bus, right? Because as a business owner, as a leader, whatever the case may be, you're tasked with driving the bus and making sure that every seat has somebody in it. But it's not just simply anybody sitting in that chair. Is the right person in the right chair, right? Because one person could be the seat right behind the driver, but they're better suited to be in the back of the bus. But guess what? You're still on the bus. You're still part of the team, right? And we got to put you in the right place so that you can succeed. Because when you succeed, guess what? I succeed. The team succeeds, right? And it's that mentality of working together as opposed to this constant battle, this constant competition. And competition is good. Competition is healthy. But you got to know who you're competing with and why you're competing.
I remember a discussion where you're talking about, okay, well, where are we going? Clarity, transparency. So for a long time, I really didn't use any of the information from the book Traction. And the reason was I'm sitting in a board meeting or, a team meeting, and I'm hearing all these terms coming out. And the terms just really didn't make any sense to me based on who they were coming from.
Mm.
And so I'm like, okay, and I know I read a lot. It's like I've heard some of these concepts, and what was interesting, I was actually finishing Measure What Matters, right? And so I'm thinking, okay, well, OKRs, okay, objectives, key results, that makes sense. And then I started asking questions about the KPIs on the scorecard because they didn't make sense. They didn't make sense for this organization that I'm sitting around the table representing. And so, again, people's feelings got hurt because I'm questioning what we're measuring, because we got to measure what matters, right? And
do they understand what a KPI is?
They don't. So if my
they don't understand what it means, what you want them to work towards?
Exactly. So if my front desk person can tell you, oh, I could just massage this number over here, so why we're measuring that? My front desk person identified the fact that this is a trail or a lag indicator. It's not a lead indicator. We can't do anything about it. So, or it doesn't maximally impact. If we change it now, it doesn't maximally impact what happens downstream. And so that was a problem for some people. And so I kept going back to the same thing. It wasn't until about a month after I was I was no longer with the organization that a friend of mine suggested that I read Traction. Well, I said, hey, I'll read it. Within the first chapter, I realized that this is the book, but the person had given the book no credence. Like, basically, these were just original ideas that they had. But when you read the first chapter of Traction, it tells you that you can't roll this thing out that way. You cannot roll something out, and you can't use KPIs or any operating system that you don't have the capacity as a leader to execute, and your team doesn't have the capacity to run. It doesn't make any sense. And you can't use KPIs as a sledgehammer for your team. You use KPIs to gain clarity about the purpose, the objectives, and the process that we got to follow. Right? And so, like, you're talking about it, we can't use, like, KPIs don't represent feelings. Leadership, like you talk about the right bus, man, if you get on a bus and it says on the front of it is going to San Diego, but everybody else on the bus except the driver said it is going to Austin, that bus is going to end up in Austin, right? So, like, the same deal, right bus, the right seats, those things, man. I think leadership requires emotional intelligence, and it does show up on your balance sheet. All right. There's not a line item for it. But if I guarantee, I did that mystery shopper deal, I could kind of figure out where they would fall with every KPI based on my experience. Just on my experience at the business, I could go back to what that business's KPIs are, and I could tell them, I say, yeah, I think you're gonna, this KPI is gonna fall within this range, that KPI is gonna fall within that range, and it was based on my experience. So it does show up when you look at your P&L, your ability as a leader to connect with your team, to connect with your ideal customer, and to deliver a value proposition for them that makes sense. It shows up.
I definitely do agree with that. But Kendell, do you do like peer-to-peer group mentoring?
Yeah. So
how can people reach you to do that?
Man, look, just so you can either call PPS or email them. They'll know how to get in touch with me. But really, just it's my email address is Kendell@m3endeavors.com. Reach out to me on Twitter, on IG, Facebook. All our handles are the same. And really, it's interesting that you asked that, because every conversation we've had has just been like this. There's been organic conversations. And just like I did, with this group out in Scottsdale, if I have the time and you have a question, I'm going to help you figure out an answer. And sometimes it's saying, hey, you know what? Give me about 10 minutes or so. Let me find somebody who's probably better suited at giving you the nuts and bolts of the answer. But I believe in clarity. And I think the life experiences that I've had, again, that whole motivate, support, and inspire. Sometimes that's just a simple phone conversation. Sometimes it's a simple email. But like, you reach out to me on any platform, and I'm down. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, Patrick said, "How about just grabbing a beer?" I agree.
Hey, that works. Yep,
I definitely agree. On Fun Times in NOLA earlier this year, great conversation. I learned a lot from everybody that was at that table. So we definitely need to do more of that. We have to have a community that we hold one another accountable and support one another, because obstacles are going to come, and we can become better leaders when we listen and also take advice from others as well too. All right.
Yeah. Cool. Well, look, man, thanks for having me on. Mo, definitely next time I'm in DC.
Yes.
We had to figure that out. Alex,
the last time he was here, man, he had me walking up and down.
Listen.
You know what? It was around this time last year too, because the back issues, man.
Well, first of all, if you're ever in Tampa, let me know, because we'll definitely.
Hey, man, so I'm coming down there. So I do. So on the Pilates side, one of my mentors is in Tampa.
Okay.
And so I'm actually supposed to be coming down there to do a training for a studio down there around kind of some blending some of the PT concepts. So let's make it happen for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Hit me up. Let me know. And the other thing too, man, we're gonna have to do a round 2 of this, because I feel like we can talk for hours about this stuff, man. You are full disclosure, I've just met him for the first time, but man, like, you've got a wealth of knowledge,
definitely
very intelligent man, obviously very successful at what you're doing, man. So we'll definitely have to figure out a different time to kind of do round 2, and definitely when you come down to Tampa, we'll have to link up. But
okay, for sure.
It's been a pleasure, man. Really appreciate your time, giving us some of the little tidbits that you got, man, because you got a lot of good stuff going on. And as always, to all of our viewers, thank you very much for this continued support. Like, share, retweet, all that good stuff. All our socials at the bottom, and then follow
Kendell.
Follow Kendell as well. All right, you guys have a good evening.
Thanks,
thank you very much.
All right, take it easy. All right.
Night.